Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the communication panel. The distress signal had been repeating for the past hour, and something about it made his stomach turn. He had been hauling cargo through space for 15 years, and distress calls were nothing new. But this one felt different. The message was simple enough. A mining colony at Proxima Junction needed immediate assistance. Their life support systems were failing, and they had maybe 12 hours before everyone died. It was the kind of emergency that no decent person could ignore. Jake looked around the bridge of his cargo ship, Helena's Dream. His crew of 6 had been with him for years. They trusted his judgment, and he trusted theirs. But right now, every instinct he had developed over decades in space was screaming at him to turn around and go home. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," said his communication officer, Pete Collins. Pete was a young man from Texas who had joined the crew 2 years ago. He had good instincts and never panicked under pressure. "Put it through, Jake," said. The voice that came through the speakers was different from the first distress call. This one was from another cargo ship called Morning Star. Their captain, a woman named Susan Davis, sounded worried. "Helena's Dream, this is Captain Davis. We just received the same distress signal you did. Are you planning to respond?" Jake picked up the communication device. "Morning Star, this is Captain Morrison. Yes, we're heading to Proxima Junction. How far out are you?" "About 6 hours. We should arrive around the same time." "Something doesn't feel right about this, Morrison. I've been doing cargo runs for 20 years and I've never seen a distress call go out to multiple ships at once." Jake nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Susan Davis had a reputation for being careful and smart. If she was worried, there was good reason to be. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the command center of Earth Defense Force headquarters. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had worked her way up through the ranks. Right now, she was staring at a display that showed the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. 4 red dots were moving toward Proxima Junction. 4 different cargo ships had all received distress calls from the same mining colony. The chances of that happening by accident were almost 0. "Get me Lieutenant Commander Phillips," she told her aide. Ryan Phillips was aboard the destroyer USS Ranger, patrolling the outer edge of human space. He was a careful officer who paid attention to details that others missed. When Admiral Carter's call came through, he was already studying strange energy readings from the Proxima Junction area. "Admiral, I'm seeing some unusual signatures out here," Phillips reported. "The energy patterns don't match anything in our database. They could be natural phenomena, but the timing seems odd." "What kind of patterns?" Carter asked. "Multiple large objects, probably ships, but they're using some kind of stealth technology. Every time I try to get a clear reading, the signals disappear." Carter felt her blood run cold. The Zephyrian Empire had been quiet for too long. Intelligence reports suggested they had been building up their military forces, but no one knew why. If they were setting a trap at Proxima Junction, 4 cargo ships full of innocent people were about to fly right into it. "Phillips, I want you to move toward Proxima Junction immediately, maximum speed, and send a warning to all ships in that area." "Yes, Admiral," but the warning would come too late. Supreme Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The human ships were moving exactly as predicted. For 30 years, the Zephyrian Empire had been studying human behavior, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. Humans were emotional creatures who couldn't resist helping others in distress. They were also technologically inferior and militarily inexperienced. The Empire's analysts had concluded that humans would be easy to defeat once the war began. The trap at Proxima Junction was perfect. 4 human cargo ships would arrive to find 7 Zephyrian dreadnoughts waiting for them. The humans would surrender immediately when faced with overwhelming force. Then the Empire could use them as hostages to force Earth's government to accept Zephyrian rule. "All ships report ready, Supreme Admiral," said his tactical officer. "Excellent. Begin final preparations. In a few hours, the human expansion will come to an end." Kethvar was confident in his plan. Every Zephyrian strategist had agreed that humans were too weak and scattered to pose a real threat. Their ships were small and poorly armed. Their crews were undisciplined civilians who would panic at the first sign of danger. The Supreme Admiral had fought wars against dozens of different species. None of them had ever surprised him. Humans would be no different. Jake Morrison felt his hands shake as Helena's dream dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Proxima Junction. What he saw made his heart stop. 7 massive alien warships hung in space like deadly predators. Each one was 3 times the size of his cargo ship. Their dark hulls were covered with weapon ports that could turn his vessel into scrap metal in seconds. "Captain, we're being targeted by multiple ships," Pete Collins said, his voice tight with fear. Jake looked at his small crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy, trusting him to keep them safe. Now he had led them into a trap that would probably kill them all. But as Jake stared at the alien fleet, something strange happened. Instead of fear, he felt anger. These creatures had used human compassion against them. They had faked a distress call, knowing that decent people would come to help. "Pete, send a message to Earth Defense Command. Tell them the Zephyrians are here in force. Then contact the other cargo ships." "What are we going to do, Captain?" asked Nancy Davis, his navigator. Jake looked at the massive alien ships again. Helena's dream carried industrial equipment and mining supplies, not exactly military hardware. But Jake had grown up on Earth during the resource wars. He knew that sometimes you had to fight even when you couldn't win. "We're going to show these aliens what happens when they threaten human lives," he said. The first shot came without warning. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the nearest Zephyrian dreadnought and struck the cargo ship Morning Star. Captain Susan Davis had only enough time to send one final transmission before her ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. "They're not taking prisoners," Jake Morrison said through gritted teeth as he watched his friend die. The aliens had opened fire immediately without even demanding surrender. This wasn't just a trap. This was an execution. "Captain, they're targeting us next," Pete Collins shouted from his station. The targeting systems on 3 alien ships were locking onto Helena's dream. Jake looked at his cargo manifest on the screen beside him. 200 tons of mining equipment, industrial explosives, and construction materials. Not weapons, but maybe they didn't need to be weapons. "Nancy, plot a collision course with that lead ship. Pete, transfer all power to the engines." His navigator stared at him. "Captain, that's suicide." "Maybe. But Susan Davis was a good person who came here to save lives. I'm not going to let her death mean nothing." The Helena's dream turned toward the massive alien vessel. Jake could see weapon ports opening along its hull like the eyes of some giant predator, but instead of fear, he felt a cold determination settle over him. "Pete, open a channel to all human ships in the area." "Channel open, Captain." "This is Jake Morrison aboard Helena's dream. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we're not going down without a fight. Remember, these things used our desire to help people against us. They killed Susan Davis in cold blood. Make them pay for every human life they take." The Helena's dream accelerated toward the Zephyrian flagship. Energy beams struck the cargo ship's hull, tearing through metal and melting armor plating, but Jake kept the ship on course. Supreme Admiral Kethavar watched the human vessel approach with confusion. Their ship was damaged and clearly doomed. Any rational being would surrender or try to escape. But the human ship kept coming. "What are they doing?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Supreme Admiral. Their course will result in collision with our flagship. They're trying to ram us? That's impossible. No species destroys valuable ships and crews for so little tactical gain." But Jake Morrison wasn't thinking about tactical gain. He was thinking about Susan Davis and the fake distress call, and the fact that these aliens thought humans were easy prey. Helena's dream struck the Zephyrian flagship just behind the main weapon array. The cargo ship's hull crumpled like paper, but the industrial explosives in her hold detonated a split second later. The explosion tore a massive hole in the alien vessel's side and sent both ships tumbling through space. Jake Morrison died instantly, but his sacrifice shocked every Zephyrian in the fleet. They had never seen a species willing to destroy their own ships just to damage an enemy. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Phillips arrived at Proxima Junction just in time to see Helena's dream explode. The USS Ranger was a small destroyer, fast and maneuverable but lightly armed. Against 7 alien dreadnoughts, it should have been helpless. But Phillips had been studying the energy signatures of Zephyrian ships for months. He knew their weapon, patterns, their shield frequencies, and their blind spots. More importantly, he understood something the aliens didn't. Human ships weren't built to last forever. They were built to fight. Helm, take us behind that asteroid field. Use the rocks for cover. Sir, that's going to put enormous stress on our engines, his pilot warned. Good. These aliens have been watching us for years, learning our standard tactics. Time to show them something they haven't seen before. The USS Ranger dove into the asteroid field at a speed that should have been impossible. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and warning lights flashed across every control panel, but Phillips had calculated the risks carefully. Weapons, target their sensor arrays. We can't outfight them, but maybe we can blind them. Meanwhile, on the science vessel Meridian, Commander Sarah Blake was analyzing the alien weapon signatures. Her ship was the smallest and weakest in the human fleet, designed for research rather than combat. But Blake was one of the smartest. Officers in Earth Defense Force. Computer, compare these energy patterns with our intelligence files on Zephyrian technology. The results made her blood run cold. The alien weapons were specifically designed to counter human ship designs. Their shields operated on frequencies that would make human energy weapons almost useless. Their armor was reinforced against the exact types of missiles that human ships carried. They've been preparing for this war for decades, she said to her science officer, Tony Martinez. Every weapon system, every defensive measure, it's all designed to fight us specifically. Blake sent her findings to the USS Ranger just as Phillips launched his attack. The destroyer came out of the asteroid field at an impossible angle, using the gravity of a large rock to slingshot around and strike the alien fleet from behind. The Zephyrians had never seen a maneuver like it. Their tactical computers couldn't predict where the human ship would go next because no sane pilot would put that much stress on their engines. Phillips fired everything he had at the nearest alien cruiser. His weapons barely scratched the aliens' armor, but they destroyed several sensor arrays and weapon targeting systems. Sir, our engines are overheating. We can't maintain this speed much longer, his engineer reported. How long do we have? Maybe 10 minutes before they explode. Phillips smiled grimly. 10 minutes was longer than he had expected. Then let's make those 10 minutes count. The USS Ranger began a series of attack runs that violated every rule of space combat. The ship moved at speeds that should have torn it apart, made turns that should have been impossible, and attacked from angles that no military academy would ever teach. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow their own rules. Human ships pushed their engines past safe limits, treated their hulls as expendable, and seemed to view death as an acceptable outcome rather than something to be avoided. Supreme Admiral Kethavar watched his tactical display with growing concern. 2 human ships had already been destroyed, but they had taken one of his cruisers with them and damaged his flagship. The 3rd human vessel was behaving in ways that his strategists had never predicted. How long until reinforcements arrive? He asked. 4 hours, Supreme Admiral. Kethavar looked at the remaining human ships. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity that made no sense. They acted as if they wanted to die, as long as they could take Zephyrians with them. For the first time in his long military career, the Supreme Admiral began to wonder if his empire had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the war room at Earth Defense Command, staring at reports that made her stomach sick. The attack at Proxima Junction was just the beginning. Zephyrian fleets were moving against human colonies across 12 different star systems. How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment? She asked her staff. 47 military vessels, Admiral. But most of them are small patrol ships and destroyers. The aliens have over 300 heavy warships. Carter looked at the tactical display. Red dots representing enemy fleets were moving toward human settlements like a plague. Earth's regular military forces would be crushed in hours. What about civilian ships? Her aide looked confused. Admiral, civilian vessels have no weapons or armor. They would be destroyed instantly. Maybe, but they have engines, and they have crews who won't give up without a fight. Carter turned to her communication officer. Send out a general call. I want every ship captain in human space to hear this message. She picked up the microphone and spoke to the entire human fleet, military and civilian alike. "This is Admiral Carter. The Zephyrian Empire has declared war on humanity. They have attacked our ships and colonies without warning. They think we are weak because we care about each other. They think we will surrender because we want to avoid death. They are wrong." Carter paused, thinking about Jake Morrison and the Helena's dream. "I am authorizing Protocol Omega. All ship captains, military and civilian, are ordered to fight by any means necessary. Your ships are not treasures to be preserved. They are weapons to be used. Your lives are not more important than human freedom. Use whatever you have, fight however you can. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten human families." Within hours, the response was overwhelming. Cargo captains like Tony Martinez began converting their ships into improvised warships. Mining vessels loaded with industrial explosives headed toward Zephyrian fleets. Even passenger ships volunteered to carry troops and supplies to threatened colonies. Captain Martinez commanded a fleet of 20 converted mining ships near the Titan system. His vessels carried plasma cutters designed to slice through asteroids, ore haulers that could launch tons of metal at high speed, and mining charges powerful enough to crack small moons. "Remember, these aren't military ships," he told his captains over the communication system. "We don't have proper weapons or armor, but we have something the aliens don't understand. We know how to work with dangerous equipment." The Zephyrian task force that arrived at Titan expected to find a few small patrol ships. Instead, they faced Martinez and his improvised fleet. The mining ships attacked in ways that no military manual had ever described. Plasma cutters designed to slice through rock tore into alien hull plating at close range. Ore haulers launched tons of metal debris like massive shotgun blasts. Mining charges turned cargo ships into giant bombs that exploded when they rammed enemy vessels. The Zephyrian commander tried to use standard fleet tactics against the mining ships, but Martinez's crews didn't follow any rules. They used industrial equipment as weapons, treated their ships like tools rather than homes, and fought with the practical knowledge of people who worked in dangerous jobs every day. Meanwhile, Commander Sarah Blake was working on a different kind of weapon. Her science team had discovered that Zephyrian ships relied on centralized computer systems that controlled everything from weapons to life support. "Their artificial intelligence is incredibly advanced," she explained to her team, "but it's also completely logical. It makes decisions based on predictable patterns and known variables." Blake had an idea that no alien strategist would ever consider. Human computer programmers had always struggled with chaos theory and random variables. But maybe that weakness could become a strength against an enemy that expected everything to follow logical rules. "We're going to create a virus based on human unpredictability. Every time their computers try to analyze it, the virus will change in ways that follow no pattern at all." Working around the clock, Blake's team built a computer program that was designed to be as illogical and chaotic as possible. It included random number generators, contradictory commands, and decision trees that led nowhere. To a human programmer, it would look like badly written code. To an alien computer system, it would be incomprehensible. The first test came when a small human courier ship, the Lucky Star, approached a Zephyrian patrol fleet. The ship was piloted by Amy Rodriguez, a civilian transport pilot who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Rodriguez's ship carried no weapons except for Blake's virus and a cargo hold full of industrial explosives. Her mission was simple: get close enough to upload the virus to an alien ship, then ram it with everything she had. "This is Amy Rodriguez aboard Lucky Star," she transmitted to the Zephyrian fleet. "I'm carrying medical supplies for a human colony. Please don't shoot." The aliens, confident in their superior firepower, allowed the small ship to approach. They planned to capture it and interrogate the pilot about human defenses. Rodriguez waited until she was close enough to touch the alien hull with her ship's communication array. Then she uploaded Blake's virus directly into the Zephyrian flagship's computer system. The effect was immediate and devastating. The alien ship's artificial intelligence tried to analyze the chaotic code and couldn't understand any of it. The virus spread through the ship's network like a digital plague, causing weapons to misfire, life support to fluctuate, and navigation to fail. "Tell my family I love them," Rodriguez said over the communication system. Then she rammed Lucky Star into the confused alien flagship at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but the virus had already spread to other vessels in the Zephyrian fleet. Within minutes, the entire patrol group was crippled by computer failures that their technicians couldn't understand or fix. News of Rodriguez's sacrifice spread quickly through the human fleet. Her success proved that even small civilian ships could hurt the aliens if they were willing to pay the ultimate price. Supreme Admiral Kethvar received reports from across the war zone that filled him with growing dread. Human ships were fighting, in ways that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They used industrial equipment as weapons, converted civilian vessels into suicide bombs, and attacked with computer viruses that followed no logical pattern. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. 47 vessels destroyed or disabled, Supreme Admiral. The humans have lost over 100 ships, but they seem to consider this acceptable. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. The human ships were smaller and weaker than his vessels, but they fought with a desperation that made them incredibly dangerous. They treated death as an acceptable outcome, rather than something to be avoided at all costs. For the first time since the war began, the Supreme Admiral wondered if his empire had underestimated humanity's capacity for violence. Supreme Admiral Kethvar stood before the Council of 12, the ruling body of the Zephyrian Empire. The massive chamber held representatives from every species in their alliance, and their faces showed growing concern about the war with humanity. "The human resistance is stronger than predicted," admitted Councillor Vextar, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. "Our losses are mounting, and their tactics are becoming more desperate." Kethvar nodded grimly. "The humans fight without regard for their own survival. They use civilian ships as weapons and treat death as acceptable if it damages our forces. We need to end this war quickly before they cause more damage." "What do you propose?" asked Councillor Merdon, whose species had contributed the most ships to the war effort. "We deploy the planet destroyers. 3 massive weapons capable of cracking worlds in half. When the humans see entire colonies turn to dust, they will surrender rather than watch their species die." The council voted unanimously to approve the plan. Within hours, 3 enormous Zephyrian vessels began moving toward the most populated human worlds. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet and kill billions of people. Admiral Carter received the intelligence report while she was planning humanity's next move. The news that planet-killer weapons were heading toward Earth, New Boston, and Terra Nova should have filled her with despair. Instead, it made her angry. "They want to kill innocent people to force our surrender," she told her staff. "They think we'll give up if they threaten our families. They don't understand humans at all." Carter turned to her communication officer. "Send a message to every ship captain in the human fleet. Tell them about the planet killers. Then ask for volunteers." The response came within minutes. Thousands of ship captains, both military and civilian, volunteered for what Carter called the kamikaze protocol. They would convert their vessels into guided missiles and pilot them directly into the alien superweapons. The first volunteer was Helen Murphy, a 70-year-old grandmother who piloted a school transport ship. Her vessel normally carried children to and from orbital stations around Earth. Now it carried enough explosives to level a city block. "I've been flying ships for 50 years, she told her granddaughter over the communication system. "I've seen wars come and go, but I've never seen anything like this. These aliens think they can scare us by threatening children. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Helen's ship, the Sunshine Express, intercepted the first planet killer as it approached Earth. The massive alien vessel was over 10 miles long and protected by dozens of smaller warships. Against such overwhelming force, one old transport ship should have been helpless. But Helen Murphy had been flying dangerous cargo through asteroid fields for decades. She knew how to make a ship do things it wasn't designed to do. The Sunshine Express dove through the alien escort fleet like a needle through cloth, dodging energy beams and missile volleys with the skill of a pilot half her age. "This is for my grandchildren," Helen said as her ship struck the planet killer's main weapon array. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface. The planet killer's primary weapon was destroyed, and the massive ship began spinning out of control. Helen Murphy died instantly, but her sacrifice saved 8 billion lives. Captain Danny Walsh commanded the USS Defiant, one of the first ships specifically designed for suicide missions. Unlike normal warships built to survive battles, the Defiant was constructed to explode and take enemy vessels with it. Every system on this ship is designed to cause maximum damage when we hit the target, Walsh explained to his volunteer crew. The engines will overload, the fuel will ignite, and the hull will fragment into thousands of metal pieces. We won't survive, but neither will whatever we hit. Walsh led a squadron of 12 suicide ships toward the second planet killer near New Boston. The alien commander tried to use his escort fleet to stop them, but the human ships were too small and fast to intercept. One by one, the suicide ships struck the massive alien vessel. Each explosion weakened the planet killer's hull and damaged its weapon systems. Walsh's ship was the last to hit, ramming directly into the alien bridge at maximum speed. The second planet killer was destroyed, but the cost was enormous. 12 ships and their crews were gone, but 5 million colonists on New Boston were still alive. Meanwhile, Commander Sarah Blake's virus continued to spread through Zephyrian computer networks. The chaotic code had evolved beyond her original design, becoming more unpredictable with each system it infected. Alien ships began suffering random malfunctions at critical moments. Weapons would shut down during battles. Navigation systems would plot courses to empty space. Life support would fluctuate without warning. The Zephyrians' greatest advantage, their advanced technology, was becoming a weakness. The virus is spreading faster than we hoped, Blake reported to Admiral Carter. The aliens are trying to counter it, but their logical approach to programming makes them vulnerable to chaos-based attacks. The third planet killer was approaching Terra Nova when it suddenly stopped moving. Blake's virus had infected its navigation system, causing the massive ship to lose its way in the middle of empty space. The alien crew spent hours trying to restart their computers while human ships moved in for the attack. Captain Rick Stone led a fleet of converted asteroid miners toward the stranded planet killer. His ships were ugly and slow, designed for industrial work rather than combat, but they carried mining equipment that could crack asteroids in half. Remember, we're not trying to survive this fight, Stone told his crews. We're trying to make sure that thing never threatens another human world. The mining ships surrounded the helpless planet killer like wolves attacking a wounded giant. Industrial drills punched through alien armor. Plasma cutters sliced into critical systems. Mining charges detonated inside the massive vessel's hull. The third planet killer was destroyed without firing a single shot at Terra Nova. Supreme Admiral Kethvar received the reports in stunned silence. All 3 planet killers had been destroyed by inferior human forces. Worse, the humans seemed genuinely happy to die if it meant protecting their worlds. How is this possible? He asked his tactical advisor. They're using civilian ships and industrial equipment against our most advanced weapons. The humans don't fight to win battles, Supreme Admiral. They fight to protect their families. They will sacrifice anything, including their own lives, to keep their people safe. Kethvar stared at the tactical display showing human fleets moving throughout the galaxy. Every red dot represented ships piloted by people willing to die for others. It was the most terrifying sight he had ever seen. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Full retreat to defensive positions. We need to reconsider our strategy. For the first time in the war, Zephyrian forces began pulling back from human space. They had learned that fighting an enemy who welcomed death was very different from fighting those who feared it. Captain Rick Stone floated in the pilot seat of his asteroid mining ship, the Iron Bull, as his small fleet approached the Zephyrian home system. Around him, 19 other converted mining vessels prepared for what everyone knew would be the most dangerous mission of the war. This is insane, muttered his engineer Ben Parker. We're taking mining ships against the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Stone smiled grimly. That's exactly why it might work. They're expecting a military attack with proper warships. They won't be ready for a bunch of crazy miners with industrial equipment. The Zephyrian home system contained over 50 defensive platforms, each one capable of destroying a fleet of human warships. Massive orbital fortresses surrounded the alien homeworld like a metal shell. No enemy force had ever penetrated these defenses. But Stone's miners weren't thinking like soldiers. They were thinking like workers who had spent years moving through dangerous asteroid fields and dealing with equipment that could kill them if they made one mistake. "Remember the plan," Stone said over the communication system. "We hide in the asteroid field until we're close enough to strike. Use the rocks for cover and the gravity wells for speed. These aliens have never fought anyone crazy enough to fly through an active asteroid field during combat." The mining ships disappeared into a belt of spinning rocks and metal debris. Their pilots navigated between asteroids the size of city blocks, using skills learned from years of dangerous work in space. The Zephyrian defense systems couldn't track them through the chaos of the asteroid field. Meanwhile, Commander Nancy Davis was implementing something she called the Berserker Doctrine near the outer planets of the system. Her ships operated without safety protocols, communication links, or retreat plans. Each vessel attacked independently, making decisions that no computer could predict. "The key is to be completely unpredictable," Davis explained to her captains before the mission began. "Don't follow any patterns, don't use standard tactics. Fight like you're completely insane, because that's the only way to beat an enemy that thinks they understand us." Davis's ships struck Zephyrian patrol fleets in ways that violated every rule of space warfare. They used gravity slingshots to achieve impossible speeds. They rammed enemy vessels at angles that should have destroyed both ships. They attacked alone instead of in groups, making each ship a separate threat that required individual attention. The Zephyrian commanders tried to respond with coordinated fleet movements, but the human ships refused to behave like a proper military force. Every time the aliens thought they understood the human attack pattern, the pattern changed completely. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, Supreme Admiral Kethvar received reports that made him question everything he thought he knew about warfare. Human forces were penetrating the most secure system in the galaxy, using tactics that made no sense. "How many ships are attacking us?" he asked his defense coordinator. "We count approximately 40 human vessels, Supreme Admiral. But they're operating independently, so we're fighting 40 separate battles instead of one coordinated attack." Kethvar stared at the tactical display. The human ships moved through his defenses like ghosts, appearing suddenly to attack and then vanishing before his forces could respond effectively. It was the most frustrating military situation he had ever encountered. The breakthrough came when Stone's miners emerged from the asteroid field directly above the planet's north pole. The Zephyrian defense systems were designed to protect against attacks from space, not from miners who used asteroid gravity to drop down on the planet like falling rocks. "All ships, this is Stone. Target the orbital defense platforms. Use everything you have." The mining ships attacked with industrial equipment that had never been designed for combat. Plasma cutters that could slice through solid rock tore into alien armor. Gravitational manipulators used for moving asteroids pulled defense platforms out of position. Mining charges designed to crack moons turned orbital fortresses into clouds of debris. The Zephyrians fought back desperately, but their weapons were designed to destroy military vessels, not industrial ships that were already falling apart from the stress of combat. Stone's miners kept fighting even as their hulls cracked and their engines overheated. During the chaos of the battle, something unexpected happened. The Zephyrians captured their first human prisoner when Sergeant Pete Collins's ship was disabled by enemy fire. The aliens expected to find a broken soldier ready to reveal military secrets. Instead, they found Collins calmly building explosives from medical supplies in his cell. "How did you get these materials?" demanded the Zephyrian interrogator. Collins looked up from his work with a smile. "You gave them to me. Pain medication contains chemicals that explode when mixed properly. The bandages make excellent fuses. And this medical scanner has a power cell that's perfect for detonation." The alien interrogator backed away in horror. "You're building weapons from medical supplies?" "Sure. My grandfather taught me to make bombs from anything. He fought in the resource wars on Earth when I was a kid. Humans learn to use whatever we have." Collins finished his improvised explosive and triggered it immediately. The explosion destroyed the entire prison section of the Zephyrian ship and killed everyone aboard, including Collins himself. The news of Collins's escape attempt spread quickly through the Zephyrian fleet. The idea that humans could build weapons from anything, even medical supplies, filled the alien crews with fear. How could you guard an enemy who could turn healing equipment into bombs? Supreme Admiral Kethvar found himself facing rebellion within his own command structure. Several alien species that had joined the war against humanity began questioning whether the fight was worth the cost. "The humans are insane," declared Admiral Korval of the Nexus Republic. "They fight like they want to die. Every ship they lose damages our forces. Every prisoner we take tries to kill us. This war is destroying our fleets faster than we can replace them." Other species agreed. The hegemony of Tal withdrew 3 fleets from human space. The Crystal Dominion recalled their forces to defend their own worlds. The Zephyrian Empire's great alliance was falling apart as member species realized that fighting humans was far more expensive than anyone had predicted. Kethvar watched his tactical display as more red dots representing human ships appeared throughout the system. Stone's miners had opened a hole in the defenses and more human forces were pouring through like water through a broken dam. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple defense platforms," reported his communication officer. "Surrender? Requests? From our own forces?" "Yes, sir. The platform commanders report that human ships are ramming their stations with suicide attacks. They say they can't defend against an enemy that considers death an acceptable outcome." Kethvar realized that his empire had made a terrible mistake. They had started a war against an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. Humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to protect what they loved, and they were willing to die for that cause. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command," he ordered quietly. "Request negotiations for peace." The war was far from over, but for the first time, the Zephyrians were asking to talk instead of fight. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the battleship USS Liberty as it led the largest human fleet ever assembled toward the Zephyrian capital world. Behind her ship flew 300 vessels of every type imaginable. Military destroyers flew alongside cargo haulers. Mining ships traveled next to passenger transports. Every human ship that could still move had come for this final battle. "Admiral, we're receiving another surrender request from the Zephyrian fleet," reported her communication officer. Carter looked at the tactical display. The alien home system was defended by over 200 warships, but many of them were already damaged from previous battles. More importantly, the Zephyrian crews were demoralized and afraid. "Ignore the surrender request," Carter ordered. "They started this war by killing innocent people. They used fake distress calls to murder cargo ship crews. They tried to destroy entire planets. Now they want to talk because they're losing." The human fleet entered the outer edge of the Zephyrian system like an avalanche of metal and fury. Unlike previous battles, this wasn't a desperate defense or a surprise attack. This was humanity bringing everything they had to end the war, once and for all. Captain Ben Parker commanded the USS Liberty, the same ship that had been named after the mining vessel destroyed earlier in the war. His vessel was scarred from dozens of battles held together with emergency repairs and the determination of its crew. "All ships, this is Parker. Remember what we're fighting for. Every human family that these aliens threatened, every colony they tried to destroy, every friend we've lost along the way. Today we show them the price of starting a war with humanity." The Liberty broke through the Zephyrian defensive line by ramming directly through their formation. The ship's hull cracked and its engines overloaded, but Parker kept pushing forward toward the alien homeworld. "Sir, we're losing hull integrity," reported his engineer. "The ship won't hold together much longer." Parker smiled grimly. "Then let's make sure we reach the surface before she comes apart." The Liberty entered the planet's atmosphere like a falling star. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship as the hull began to break apart from the stress. But Parker held the ship together through sheer willpower and stubborn determination. "This is for Jake Morrison and the Helena's dream," he said as the Liberty struck the Zephyrian Capitol building. The explosion could be seen from orbit. The massive government complex that had ruled 12 alien species disappeared in a ball of fire and debris. Ben Parker and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice sent a clear message to every alien in the system. Supreme Admiral Kethvar, watched the destruction of his government from his flagship in orbit. The sight of humans willing to fly ships through a planet's atmosphere just to strike a target filled him with something he had never felt before in his long military career. Fear. How many ships are they willing to lose? He asked his aide. All of them, Supreme Admiral. Intelligence reports suggest that every human vessel in their fleet is prepared for suicide missions. They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to eliminate our entire civilization. Kethavar realized that he was facing an enemy unlike any his species had ever encountered. Humans didn't fight for territory or resources or political advantage. They fought for survival, and they were willing to destroy everything, including themselves, to protect their people. The final phase of the battle began when human ships reached the planet's surface. Landing craft filled with volunteers began attacking Zephyrian cities directly. But these weren't soldiers trying to conquer territory. They were ordinary people who had lost friends and family to the war. Lisa Shaw, a nurse from Earth, led a group of medical volunteers who had converted their ambulances into armored vehicles. They moved through the alien capital, not to kill civilians, but to destroy the military installations that had planned the attack on human space. "We're not here to hurt innocent people," Shaw explained to her team. "We're here to make sure their government never threatens human families again." The volunteers fought with makeshift weapons and improvised tactics, but they had something the Zephyrians couldn't understand. They were fighting for something they loved more than their own lives. Meanwhile, Commander Sarah Blake's virus had spread throughout the entire Zephyrian computer network. Alien ships found their weapons systems failing at critical moments. Government. Buildings lost power randomly. Even basic communication between alien forces became unreliable. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled through superior technology and careful planning, discovered that their greatest advantage had become their greatest weakness. Humans had turned their own computers against them. As the battle raged around the capital world, something unexpected happened. Alien civilians began approaching human forces with white flags, asking for protection from their own military leaders, who had started the war. "Please don't hurt our children," a Zephyrian mother begged Lisa Shaw as human volunteers secured a government building. Shaw looked at the alien woman holding her young offspring and saw something familiar: fear for her children, love that transcended species, the same emotion that had driven humans to fight so desperately. "We're not here to hurt families," Shaw said gently. "We're here to stop the people who tried to hurt ours." The sight of human soldiers protecting alien civilians spread quickly through the capital. The Zephyrian people, who had been told that humans were savage monsters, saw instead people who fought fiercely to protect the innocent, even if those innocent people belonged to enemy species. Supreme Admiral Kethavar received reports that his own population was turning against the war. Alien civilians were actively helping human forces locate military targets while protecting their own families. The great Zephyrian Empire was collapsing from within. "Sir, we're receiving communication from the other member species of our alliance," his aide reported. "The Nexus Republic, the Crystal Dominion, the Hegemony of Tal, and 6 other governments are formally withdrawing from the war. They're requesting separate peace treaties with humanity." Kethavar looked at his tactical display one final time. Red dots representing human ships covered the entire system. His great fleet was scattered and demoralized. His government was destroyed. His alliance had abandoned him. But more than that, he finally understood what his empire had tried to fight. Humans weren't just another species competing for resources. They were a people so devoted to protecting others that they would sacrifice everything, including their own lives, for that cause. "Send a final message to Admiral Carter," he ordered. "Full and unconditional surrender. The Zephyrian Empire formally acknowledges defeat and requests mercy for our civilians." 3 years later, Captain Lisa Shaw of the USS Vengeance patrolled the borders of human space. The Zephyrian Empire had collapsed completely, its member species too traumatized by the war to maintain their alliance. Some had become trading partners with humanity. Others had simply isolated themselves, afraid to provoke the species that had proven impossible to defeat. Shaw looked out at the stars and thought about all the people who had died to win this war. Jake Morrison, Helen Murphy, Ben Parker, Amy, Rodriguez, and thousands of others who had given their lives to protect human freedom. The galaxy had learned something important from the war. Humans were not the strongest species or the most advanced, but they were the most dangerous when fighting for something they loved. In schools throughout alien space, children learned about the human war as a lesson in the price of underestimating an enemy. They were taught that Earth's people fought with a ferocity born not of hatred, but of love. Love for their families, their species, and their freedom. And in human space, the children learned about the heroes who had saved their civilization. People who had faced impossible odds and won, through courage, sacrifice, and the simple refusal to give up when everything they cared about was at stake.